Hello and welcome to Underground Pyramid Radio. I'm your host, Nate Mason, and I'm glad to have you with me. Now, this is a new thing, the Underground Pyramid Radio, and here at the UPR, our goal is to basically have you relaxed, and this is a place we're going to be talking about music, about good music, and good art, and good friends. We're going to be having friends on the podcast very soon. And so, yeah, this is a place where you can find your freedom of expression and to feel comfortable being who you are. Because that's what everybody wants, isn't it? Just to be who they are and to be fully themselves and not be judged. So, welcome. Come sit in. Take a seat. Relax. Light up a joint. Whatever you feel like doing. Anyways, pour yourself a drink or have some lemonade. Whatever rocks your boat, you know. It's no big deal to me. Anyways, so tonight I'm gonna be talking about music here on the Underground Pyramid Radio. Specifically, my favorite bands. All right, let's do this. So I gotta say, I am a huge music aficionado. I've been listening to music since I was, basically since I can remember. And really the first band that really stood out to me was the Beatles. And my parents played them in the car when we were on road trips or just going around town. I'm from Houston, so my mom was from California. She always had that 70s California vibe going on. So she's just a pretty smart lady. And so she would be playing Yellow Submarine for me and my sister, a very children-esque record. And the Beatles were always a band for me that stood out. And they have stood the test of time. It's been more than 50 years since they began, and people still love them. Now, recently I got a record player, and I absolutely love Revolver. I got that record just the other week, and there's something about having a physical copy of an album in your hand. It could be a CD, an LP, whatever. But it's so nice to actually have a physical album in your hand, because there's not any of this digital crap. And plus, I will say that I have really begun to realize what vinyl is all about. And vinyl it actually is way better than digital in a lot of respects. So when you play a song on your computer, you're actually missing out on this whole wide spectrum of frequency that exists, these frequencies. And obviously they're invisible to the eye, but you can hear them. And when you play a record on a record player, a nice one with actually good speakers, you will hear the difference. You will hear this warmth that exists in that area of your ears, that it's basically just kissing your ears. It's like making love to your ears. And this is real. I really didn't believe people when they talked about this, teachers and whatnot. Oh yeah, it's a warmth, whatever. But it really is this whole... it really does add color to the music. And so if you play a Beatles record on vinyl, it is going to sound 10 times better than on digital. Because when you play it on digital, it is missing these frequencies. And you can understand why people were so creative back then. They made records for people that would sit down and listen to them. It wasn't any of this earbud stuff. Oh yeah, I'm going to the gym, let me just listen to my favorite tracks. No, this is an event in itself. And it's like the next best thing to having a concert. And Revolver is a very special album. So it was made, I believe, in 1966, 1965, somewhere around there. But it was the turning point, basically. You could say also Rubber Soul. But Revolver is very special because the last track in Revolver, Tomorrow Never Knows, was the first track that they actually used artificial double tracking on. And artificial double tracking, or ADT, was invented by this guy, this engineer in Abbey Road Studios. And I should really look up his name because he was a very smart fellow. Let's see, I've got it here somewhere. But yeah, okay, Abbey Road, let's see, ADT. Yeah, so the cool thing about ADT was before this, you had to, if you wanted to really have your vocals to stand out on a record, you have to record it exactly the way that you had recorded the first time again. And so it was very, very difficult to recreate that track. And so, yeah, the guy's name was Ken Townsend. And he came up with the idea one night after John Lennon complained about the tedious task of recording a doubled vocal take, which was widely used in those days to boost and enrich vocal parts. He needed to match the second take as closely as possible to the lead take, which took considerable time and effort. So Ken Townsend understood that to achieve a natural sounding effect, simply applying a different EQ or compression would not do. Worse, it would create phasing problems. What he needed was a process that would alter the timbre, time, and pitch of the vocal take. He realized that changing the tape speed back and forth would create all this effect simultaneously. And so the technique he finally came up with worked as follows. When mixing a song, the track to be artificially doubled, usually a vocal track, though any other track could be treated similarly, would be routed from the recording head of the multi-track tape, which was ahead of the playback tape, and fed to the recording head of the second tape machine. An oscillator would then be used to vary the speed of the second machine, providing more or less delay depending on how quickly or how slowly the second machine was being run in relation to the first. This signal would then be routed from the playback head of the second machine to a separate fader on the mixer. The tape operator had to ride the varispeed control in order to create the desired effect. Any mistake along the way would require another take. But the introduction of ADT was a milestone in the history of sound recording, and the technique was used heavily on many historic recording sessions at Abbey Road Studios. Over the year, many recording engineers have tried to replicate the effect, but with only partial success, largely because a definitive description of the exact process used at Abbey Road has until now been a closely guarded secret. And I know this because I actually got the Real ADT plugin. It's something you can use on your computer now. That basically recreates the effect. And it is just so cool. It's like, you can get your voice to sound exactly like John Lennon on Tomorrow Never Knows. So if you have the music, go ahead and go listen to Tomorrow Never Knows, because it's so revolutionary for its time. And you can see how it led into 1967, 66 and 67 when they were experimenting. And this is why I love the Beatles, is because what they ended up doing was, going into I Am the Walrus. I forget the name of the album, but after that, Sgt. Pepper's. Magical Mystery Tour. So, the Beatles are probably my favorite band because, there's this evolution that happened. And I'm actually reading this amazing book right now. And that book is basically about the Beatles and all of their recording techniques. And it has all of the logs from Abbey Road Studios, which was called EMI back in the day. And the engineers would write down what they would do for each day. I think starting in 1963. So, from that point to 1970, you have all of these exact things that they did. So during the day, they'd come in and then they'd list the different experimental techniques that they would do. And there's actually a great quote from Paul McCartney that said, when he was talking about in the studio, you had sound engineers back in the day that would be wearing white coats, and it was like almost being in a laboratory or like a hospital, because, you had all these guys with white coats running around operating the machines. And they didn't like it if you broke the rules. But he said that they broke the rules because they thought they knew better. Which in some ways, you'd have to say, yeah, pretty much. So Paul said, here's the quote. It says, "We would say, try it. Just try it for us. If it sounds crappy, okay, we'll lose it. But it just might sound good. We were always pushing ahead. Louder, further, longer, more, different. I always wanted things to be different because we knew that people generally always want to move on. And if we hadn't pushed them, the guys would have stuck to the rule books and still been wearing ties." So that goes to show that level of thinking ahead, being beyond your years and pushing the boundaries of what's possible. So if you need inspiration, the Beatles are it. Man, so yeah, and I think the Beatles are the best when they get into their psychedelic aspects. And yeah, and so the I would say personally, like the Beatles, the album that probably is my favorite is Magical Mystery Tour. Revolver is good, but yeah, Magical Mystery Tour. You've got I Am the Walrus. You've got Flying, which is an incredible song. Because they had all these tape machines back then. They didn't have computers, so you'd have all of the stuff, and then they would loop it. They would put it into one tape machine, and then you'd record a guitar, and then change it to be sounding like it was going backwards. And that's just like a whole other level, of genius. It really is. It really is genius. Yeah. So, and I'm actually looking right here, just looking at the Magical Mystery Tour. So, Magical Mystery Tour apparently was after Sgt. Pepper's in 1967, but yeah. So, Magical Mystery Tour, the Fool on the Hill, great song. Flying, Blue Jay Way, Your Mother Should Know, which is kind of like stand out. But no, yeah, and then I Am the Walrus, Hello Goodbye, Strawberry Fields Forever, Penny Lane, Baby You're a Rich Man, All You Need Is Love. I mean, how can you beat that? It's just so every song on that album is beautiful. Yeah. So the next band that just blows my mind every time is The Doors. And The Doors is very special in my heart because I'm a huge fan of Jim Morrison. And I don't know why he gets a lot of criticism because, it's like if you're someone who goes from like being a nobody to being a rock star, like that's a huge change in your life. And like for him, he was a poet first. Like all he wanted to do was be a poet. And so he's kind of that like tortured genius, that happens a lot with creativity. Anyways, yeah, Jim Morrison, The Doors, Ray Manzarek, Robbie Krieger, John Densmore. Those guys were incredible. And what they did with their sound, it was like bending reality. The music became the background for something else. I mean, I wasn't at those concerts, but you can feel the energy when you watch something like Live at the Hollywood Bowl. Apparently, Jim's tripping on acid, but it's 1967, so how many people were tripping on acid, back then? And I mean, I've definitely I find inspiration in that, because you've got these substances that now they're banned and whatever, but like back in the day there wasn't even any law about it. And personally, like it's really not that bad compared to heroin or something like like McDonald's cheeseburgers. Like there's probably fast food is way worse for you than LSD. Like, to be honest, I mean, I've done LSD quite a few times, and every time it's been amazing. And, I don't care who knows that, because it's like, it's the next level. It really is. It's a beautiful experience. It's just like, 8 hours of seeing God, which, you wouldn't even get that in church. So, there you go. But, yeah. So the Doors are very light and dark, theatrical. For me, when I listened to the Doors, the first time I listened to the Doors, I think I was 14, and I was in high school, and so this is an interesting story. So when I was 14, I moved to a different city from Houston, to this really tiny town, Tyler, in East Texas. And I went to this Christian high school, private high school. It was so much fun. No, but that's not the point. So I had played football the year before, and the coach was like obsessed with having more people playing football because it was such a small school. And little did I know I'd become a punching bag. But basically what I would do, being 14, having nothing to do in a new town, like being around all these country hicks after moving from the city, basically, was I would have these 2-a-days in football, right? So you would like practice in the morning, and you had to come back in the afternoon for like another practice, which it's barbaric if you think about it. I mean, like, football is the only sport that, like, people are okay with, like, getting concussions. It's like the main one that, like, it's not good for you. I mean, I can't believe that I actually did at the time, but it was kind of like a peer pressure thing, honestly. Like, we back in the day, it's like you go through all the ringer of church and school and everything, and it's like you don't have a voice. So back then, I would do these 2-a-days, and I would practice in the morning and then come home, take a shower, and then just like lie in my bed. And I got these CDs for my birthday, and one of them was The Doors, Strange Days, and the first album. So I would put it in my stereo, the CD. There are CDs. Put them in my big stereo next to my bed. So I always loved music, and I would just sit in my bed exhausted, like lay down with the lights off and listen to The Doors. And this music that was coming out of the speakers was incendiary. And, it made me want to get high before I had ever gotten stoned or had ever experienced anything like that. And, like, music that gets you stoned, like, that's my whole world. Like, that's what makes me want to make music today, is I want to make music that gets people stoned. I want to make people feel high from listening to my music. But when it was, when I was listening to Strange Days, right, I think the first actually song is Strange Days. So, it comes in with this riff. And that's Ray on the organ. And it's just so mind-blowing, right? It's like almost like being at a carnival or a circus, but it's not like a weird circus with clowns and like animal abuse. It's like, this is the place you want to be. And it's like a fun house, It's like And I love the cover. It's got a bunch of these, Carney people. They released it in 1967, so way ahead of their time. And so you've got that Strange Days, the first track. And then Your Lost Little Girl comes in. Your lost little girl. It's so hypnotic, that music. Like I said, it made me want to get stoned. And then you've got Love Me Two Times, Unhappy Girl, and then Horse Latitudes, which is like, it's a mind fuck because it's very like avant garde and trippy, and it's like people screaming and like you don't know what to expect, like different emotions, but it's like it's leading to a point. And then you've got the song Moonlight Drive, which when I heard Moonlight Drive, I was like, well, this is it. This is like my whole world. And when I heard Moonlight Drive, it made me want to be a singer. Um, yeah. And that his voice is so, and it's crazy because Jim was not, a trained singer, but he had that kind of crooner voice. I don't even know what crooner means, but I think it's like someone like Frank Sinatra, or it's kind of like someone who would almost sing like Elvis, I guess you could say. But underneath that voice is this hypnotic rhythm, with Ray, and they didn't even have a bass player. Ray Manzarek, he played the bass and the treble parts on his organ. I might have been a Hammond. I don't know. Not an expert on that, but the guy was a genius. And so you had Robbie on guitar playing this almost like Spanish style, like flamenco influence. Like they had all these different influences, right? And then John Densmore, who's like, he's like a spider on the drums, like with the creativity. It's beautiful. So yeah, and then you have People Are Strange, which is a genius song. If you look at the lyrics, people are strange when you're a stranger. Faces look ugly when you're alone. Women seem wicked when you're unwanted. Streets are uneven when you're down. That's just genius to me. When you're strange, faces come out of the rain. When you're strange, no one remembers your name. Uh, you know, Women seem wicked when you're unwanted. Streets are uneven when you're down. It's like capturing a mood, right? And the Doors were very much like that. They had, Jim came in with his poetry and he was looking at angles of the human experience, and so I think that music transcended just what it was about in the moment. And that's something I've noticed is certain artists, every now and then musicians come along, or artists, and they really are larger than life. And part of that aspect comes, I think, from their universal nature, is that, years down the line, millions of people have listened to this music, and it becomes not just, belonging to one or four different individuals, but then it belongs to humanity as a collective. So you have that aspect, and in the moment it's not necessarily always seen, but then later on you realize, wow, this is like something way bigger than than what it is, to you in the moment. So never underestimate yourself. Okay? So yeah, the Doors, the Beatles, the Doors. Third on my list of favorite bands is Led Zeppelin. And to me, Led Zeppelin is the quintessential rock and roll band. To me, Led Zepp is larger than life. And there's actually a great documentary that you should check out if you haven't. It's called Becoming Led Zeppelin. And I watched it actually with my parents, and it is so good. It's like a wall of sound that hits you. And basically, that documentary is about how Led Zeppelin came to be and their first and second albums, how they made those. And basically, they're being catapulted to stardom. And the proof is in the music. It's funny, I've actually talked to a lot of people. I mean, I've met a few people in my life that were, so-called friends that were saying, oh, Led Zeppelin's like, what is Led Zeppelin, blah, 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 blah. Like, there's so many people that will not admit how good they are. And I think it's because people get jealous. There's this whole idea that was perpetuated by the media that these people, that they were, using girls, that they were basically abusing underage girls and, just so they could have sex with them. But it's like, it's funny because I've read, I mean, that idea started in the media. And I've got a great article from Robert Plant. He talked to the rock journalist name Cameron Crowe back in 1975, I believe. And it is so good because it's all about basically he was saying that you have these people that are saying that we're monsters, that we devour these girls and then spit out the bones, but we're really just good time boys. Like we're this is what he said that we're really just good time boys that love our fans and our fans love us, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's like there's so many, even today there's this whole idea that I think it's really specifically in this culture is like people are so repressed that you have to have somebody to blame. And if there's people that are really successful at what they do, then it's easy to blame somebody like that, especially when your life sucks. Like so I think it's like, let the critics say what they will, but at the end of the day, they're not on the top of the hill. They're not the ones that are living your life. So why let what other people tell you what to do, And that's a big thing I think I've realized is I've actually had so many people in my life that growing up from a kid, basically, being in elementary school at that point, like third, like growing up, either kids or adults telling me, "Oh, you can never do that." Just like random people, or it's like they weren't really good friends, but like there's so much negativity. There's so many people that they don't even know you that will doubt you, and it's like, step off, man. Like, you don't know anything about me. Like, I'm cool. I'm good. Like, and I've just been realizing that recently I've been, I had just started doing therapy, and it's beautiful because it's, you unpack all these layers and maybe stuff that you learned as a child, and you realize Well, all that is bullshit anyways. Like, what society, who society teaches us to be is not actually good for me, you know? It's like, and I think that's why we're at the point where we're at in society, is that there's so many um, maybe creative people or people that have all these ideas and they're doubting themselves. They've been told, you know, that they've been told that they can't do what they want, what they desire to be, who they desire to be. But at the end of the day, man, you have to be yourself. You have to be the person that you know that you want to be. I mean, it sounds harder than it actually is, but you have to really, like, I think the point is, and this is how people have were back in the day, like before the 21st century, is that, you know, even if you're not exactly where you want to be, like, start being the person that you want to be, and you'll notice a change when you actually feel how it feels to be a new to be a new version of yourself. If you actually sit with yourself in silence or meditation and feel what it feels to achieve your dreams, to be, I don't know, if you want to be a singer, be on stage, or a guitarist, or whatever, a movie star, or a director, like, imagine yourself in the director's chair and just roll with it, baby, because life is too short and we get too hung up on things that don't matter. And that's what I've been learning, is life should be fun. Like, life's supposed to be fun. And that's why I'm starting this podcast. That's why, you know, there's more to come. I'm working on a whole other album. I'm actually starting a band too. So it's not going to be just me here in a little bit. I'm hoping to get my bassist on the podcast because that guy's pretty cool. His name is Billy. But yeah, Led Zepp, man. So out of all of the albums, I'd say that it's a tie maybe for me just recently between the second and the third albums. The second album is so good because it's got the song, the Lemon Song. You know, squeeze my lemon till the juice runs down my leg, which I would love to cover, by the way. It's so bluesy, and I think that's something that is missing from modern music today, or like bands, you know, is that blues influence. Because back the day, you know, you had Muddy Waters, you had Son House, you had just all these, you know, real bluesmen, Howlin' Wolf, Buddy Guy, he's still around, and I actually did see Buddy Guy, and that is a phenomenal show. If you get the chance, go see Buddy Guy, because the guy is a legend. I mean, you know, he taught Hendrix how to play with his teeth and to play behind his back. Like, you gotta know someone like that is the man. Um, and so you had all these blues guys, right, back in the day that were just trying to survive by playing their music. And yeah, I love the thing about, you know, the thing I love about the third album is how it really goes acoustic, the Led Zeppelin acoustic aspect, and it really opened up such a depth in their music. And you know, they started from this blues rock to just going all out hard rock, metal, you know, whatever you want to call it. And then you have this, you know, totally different aspect. It's like they kind of got burnt out on the whole like loud amps vibes, and they just needed to take a break. So they went into Wales, you know, Robert and Jimmy, and they stayed at this cottage in Wales, and they wrote a bunch of these songs. And you know, it's I haven't been to England, I haven't been to Wales, I have not been to the UK, but I just hear so many amazing things about it. I mean, there's so many layers of history, and so you talk to somebody from the US, it's hard for people to grasp that because there's so many layers of history. It forces you to look, I think, at yourself and like the human condition. And I think that aspect is amazing. I mean, there's a huge tradition of storytelling in Europe, and going back to the days of the castles and the Vikings and the Normans and all these different people and their own traditions and stories that that music really like weaves in a tapestry of not only good music but a heritage. And I've actually been doing my ancestry recently, and it is just so incredible because I think I've traced the furthest back that I've traced my ancestors to is I on my dad's mom's side. She actually, her part of her family, there were the Deruth, and they went back all the way to the Normans, and they were in the Crusades with Richard the Lionheart, and they were like the minor lords of the parish, of it, one of the parishes near York. And so like when you go that far back, it's just crazy. Like I've also got so I've got 20% Scottish from my mom's side, and then 38% like North York, North England, like York area, and so this is looking at like I think it's just looking at like the common DNA for people like for the last 200 years. And so it might not like paint like a full picture like thousands of years, but you get the idea. So yeah, 20% Scottish, 38% North York, and then North England and York, and then I believe I have 14 or 17% German, which was really cool for me because I'm actually learning German. And I've been to Germany a few times, and I freaking love it. Germany is amazing. Not to mention the women are beautiful. And I also love German beer and pretzels, because why not? Um, so yeah, and then of course I've got, I believe it's 22% Swedish, and that's also on my dad's side, who was the first person born in the U.S. And after that, his family was from Sweden, which is cool. And I'm actually going to Sweden this summer in July. I'm going to this guitar camp called Freak Guitar Camp, and if you get the chance, it happens every year. It's run by this guy Matthias Eklund. Look it up, Freak Guitar Kitchen. I mean Freak Guitar Camp. Their band, his band's name is Freak Kitchen. That's why I was saying it. But anyways, yeah, I definitely feel it because I've got the Viking blood, and so like when I listen to like, Battle of Evermore on the fourth album or Immigrant Song, it really registers with me. Like, and that's something I aspire to too, is to write songs about Vikings and dragons and castles, like, and that's why I love Led Zeppelin too, is because they add in that whole mythological element. They wrote songs about Lord of the Rings, Ramble On, and um, It was in the darkest depths of Mordor when I met a girl so fair. When Gollum and the evil one slipped in and stepped in and slipped away with her. Yeah, so Led Zeppelin to me is very special in the aspect that they went from very very loud to very soft, and they were a phenomenon at the time, and so you know yeah, like if anybody in my life ever tells me again, like talks trash about that band, I will leave the room because they have no business speaking. Yeah. So another band that I really love is AC/DC. And the cool thing about that is I'm actually going to go see them. Yeah. And it's crazy because the guitar camp that I'm going to in Sweden, the day before AC/DC is playing a show in Gothenburg, which is like kind of close to Oslo and really close to the camp. So I'm going to see AC/DC. I'm so stoked for this show. I think it's July 28th. And it's because of their attitude, I mean, they're still going. Obviously, Angus's brother Malcolm died, but they're still rocking. I mean, they're in their 70s or late 70s maybe. They're still doing it. Like, if anybody tells you that you're too old to do something, that's completely wrong. Like, nobody, it's like you're only as old as you feel at the end of the day, and those guys are still doing it. Like, props to them, because like if you're doing what you love, then you'll never work a day in your life, and there's nothing wrong with that, man. Like, it's life is too short. Like, you're supposed to enjoy it. So that I've got a record player, right? So I bought a few AC/DC records, and I got Power Rage is the one that I have in my hands. And it's got Rock and Roll Damnation, Down Payment Blues, Gimme a Bullet, Riff Raff, Sin City, What's Next to the Moon, Gone Shootin', Up to My Neck and You, Kicked in the Teeth. If you know any of the songs, you would know that AC/DC is high energy. And it's like when you're listening to their music, like nothing's gonna get you down, And that's really something that I think is missing from music these days. And it's really comes down to the saying, rock and roll can save the world. And that's really true. One great rock song can change people's lives. And like, go watch School of Rock. That's a movie from 20 years ago. If you don't know it, you gotta watch it, like, because it's so genius. Like, you look at the state of music these days, and you have to ask, like, why does music suck so much today? And I think it's because that, as a society, or like what's popular, like what makes money is not necessarily good music. And good music is not necessarily what makes good money. And that's where the two paths converge and diverge. And that's really something that I think is wrong with society today, is that we pay attention more to these crappy rappers and to pop idols than we do, like, actually a good singer. Like, I even get tired of metal, that, like, this whole screaming thing. Like, I mean, it's cool if you can do it, but no, my point is, like you can tell that, like, society has, like, devolved just in the last couple years. Or maybe it's been a slow progression like the last 20 years, like I feel sometimes. But, it's, you can see how, like, proportionate, like, society becoming worse of a place to the music that's popular, or the music that's used to be popular. Even in the early 2000s, you had great bands. There's I don't even remember the name of this band, but it's like the one that goes do 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 do. I'm sure you would know, but you guys listening, but anyways, it's like, it's so crazy just to be like, to bear witness to all of this. It's like, you've had, and Jim Morrison has this great quote. It's that whoever controls the media controls the mind. And that's really true. It's actually a great album, too. It's a record, and it's got all these live performances from the Doors. You should check it out. Whoever controls the media controls the mind. But, he was way ahead of his time, because he was saying, in an interview, that it's been proven that people who listen to the top 25 on radio, that people like what they're exposed to the most. So it's not even like people, like, know what they like. And a lot of the times, like, people want to be told what to listen to. And that's not a good place to be if you want to live in a free society, is when, you've got a bunch of batshit crazy people that are acting like they know what's going on. But, like, at the end of the day, like, the emperor has no clothes. And even in the case of the music industry, that is an industry. And so you have to make money if you want to be, like a star these days. But even in that case, I believe that music is something that you cannot control. That music is always going to be free. And there's going to be new bands that are going to come up, and they're going to break through all the bullshit. Because, like, music is the language of the emotions, and music is the universal language. And it doesn't matter what, language that you speak, English, Spanish, French, like, whatever, like, people understand music, and it moves them, and it empowers them to be themselves, and not to, it's like what Jimi Hendrix said, is that, I make music to that hypnotizes people. And when they're hypnotized, then I can whisper, I can tell them what to think. And it's kind of true. It's like, we've got this society that's doesn't even know who it is most of the time. Most people don't know who they are. But music is that light. Music turns on the lights and exposes the cockroaches, whoever you want to think of as a cockroach. But anyways, I digress. So AC/DC, man. AC/DC is like quintessential rock and roll. There's so many kids these days that don't even know, who Jim Morrison is. Or, like, I'm sure most people know AC/DC, but if they don't, like, facepalm moment. But, like, really, it's the truth. Like, there's so many kids that don't know what good music is these days. They just, like absorb all the garbage and then spit it out, and they wonder why their lives suck. Like, it's because you've got the wrong frequency that you're listening to. If you want your life to be good, you got to be on that high energy wavelength of AC/DC, or just any music that moves you. It's like, you can't stay stagnant. You can't expect to live in dirty water. You know, you can't get life from trashy music. And there's so much trashy music these days, which we can go on and about in a different lesson, different episode. So yeah, rock and roll can save the world. But what is rock and roll? So so rock and roll to me is, it's not a specific sound. It's what the music makes you feel. And rock and roll is an attitude, and it's an attitude that says, I'm going to be me, and if you don't like it, you can step off. And rock and roll is also, it's like, it's a way of life. It's freedom. Freedom is, to me, is just to be yourself and not have anybody else interfere with that. It's like, we don't need, unless it helps you, like, we don't need any religion. We don't need, like, we don't even need, an American education. Like, look at the education system, but, like, a European one would probably be way better. But, anyways, it's like we don't need all this stuff, coming in between us, like, each other, because what matters is, like, a connection to each other, and how you feel in your heart. And rock and roll is a way to express what you have in your heart. So I hope that helps if anybody's out there listening who feels that way. Yeah. So to me, AC/DC is amazing. Now I've got this other album. I've only got a couple more minutes, so we can talk about this next week. But I wanted to talk about the Rolling Stones. So the Stones, so good. If you need an album to listen to Let It Bleed. And this album came out after Let It Be, which, you could see the connection there. But I believe 1970, you've got Let It Bleed, Love in Vain, Midnight Rambler, Gimme Shelter. You got The Silver, You Can't Always Get What You Want, Live With Me, Monkey Man, Country Honk. The thing I love about the Stones is, like, how they blended all these different elements into their music. You got blues and rock and roll and, like, country. And I love the way that Mick, like, makes his voice very country in these songs. You Got the Silver is a great example. And you still have you have them experimenting, but then you can write, like, probably one of the best songs of all time, Give Me Shelter, and then Midnight Rambler, and You Can't Always Get What You Want, like, on the same record. You can't say that there's anything like that today. There's no equivalent in popular music today than having, like, 3 hits like that. Like, something that is so good, and even better live, because I've listened to them live. I haven't seen them, but it's so much better. Like, if you need to judge a band or an artist, if they're better live, I mean, that they're seriously amazing if they're better live than their albums. If you already love their albums and they're better live. So Let It Bleed is a great album. And it's this album, it's got a cake, and it's the Rolling Stones on the cake. And they're on a record player. Or they're kind of like I don't know, it's like one of those English tea kind of things where the cake is on this like little stand, but then the back, like the record's broken. So I kind of see it as like a commentary of the Beatles back in the day, at the time, like the Beatles breaking up. But but yeah, I think the Stones are a very special band, and if you need inspiration, go and watch them in concert. They have a ton of different, you know, uh, recorded concerts from the last 50 years, and that's what makes them special. If like seeing a band, I mean, hearing a band's record is one thing, but listening to them live is another. And that's one of the best things about Led Zeppelin that you can find on YouTube. Actually, if you look up, my favorite channel is actually Led Zeppelin Rarities, um, and you can find a ton of bootleg recordings of their concerts. So, back in the day, you'd have people go to these concerts and they'd record from wherever they were and keep it. You couldn't like necessarily publish it, but um, you'd have people record these concerts, and Led Zeppelin Rarities on YouTube has all these bootlegs that people have finally uploaded or put on the internet. And so if you listen, like, no concert, like, they will never play the same song, the same song the same way, twice. And that's what makes them special, and that's what makes rock and roll special. That's what makes any great artist special, is that I think as an artist, if you were playing shows, touring around the country, that you get bored playing the same thing over and over again. And so to have that free flowing aspect in a concert is like, it's the pinnacle, because you never know what you're gonna get, right? So yeah, I think that's something that today, that if you're a musician and listening to this, then that's something you can do. That's something that I'm gonna certainly do when I play concerts in my new band, is to improvise on stage. And we'll talk more about this next week because we're out of time. But some like bands like Pink Floyd, like the Stooges, they started out, I mean, they weren't necessarily playing songs like normal songs. They would just like experiment on stage, and all the best bands did this. Black Sabbath and Led Zeppelin and probably Queen. It's like you're gonna play the songs when you have really good songs and you enjoy what you're playing, but you want to mix it up, and you want to and the music kind of has like a life of its own. I mean, it does have a life of its own, so you can use that. And the best concerts are like that, is when you're feeling the moment and you're like improvising on stage, and like the singer is like just singing what he feels in his heart, and it's like like whatever's happening in the moment is influencing the show. And that's what makes music special. That's what makes it exciting. And people love that, and that's what's, I think, missing from our society today. But like I said, a new day is coming, and so stay tuned. And from me on the Underground Pyramid Radio, I want to say thanks so much for tuning in. I've got a new show coming every week. So I'm recording this on Wednesday. It might be a couple days before I upload it. But I got to do all the art for the cover of this new radio show and everything. So give me a little time, folks, and there's more coming. So from me at the Underground Pyramid Radio, I want to say thanks. And this has been Luke Nelson, and I'm signing off. And thank you again for listening. I hope you have a great night and enjoy your evening and listen to good music. One love. Peace.